The following interview was conducted as part of the Price of Freedom project by the Madison County Military Heritage Commission to inform our community of the sacrifices made by those in the military on battlefields around the world. We wish to thank the Huntsville School System and the ETV Broadcast Center for their help in presenting this military heritage program. Hello everyone, I'm Tom Kennemer. Welcome to our program. Today we'll be talking with U.S. Army veteran Ken Trickey. Ken served 20 years in the Army and is the recipient of the Army Commendation Medal with Valor for his gallantry in action while serving in Vietnam. Ken also received the Purple Heart for wounds he suffered during the war. He was inducted into the Madison County Military Heritage Hall of Heroes in 2011. Ken, it's a pleasure to have you with us, sir. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure too, Tom.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little about yourself. Now, you were raised, I know you're born in Illinois. Is that
Yes.
right? Were you raised there as well?
Yes, I was born in Alton, Illinois, and my father had a business in Wood River. And that's basically where I stayed until I entered the service.
Were your dad in the service?
No, my dad couldn't go. He was too short and had, I guess, flat feet the way they talked about it back then.
Well, tell us a little about growing up in, and did you say Alton?
Alton, Wood River, they're 3-4 towns real close together. And my father.
Is that near Chicago?
No, we're right across the river from St. Louis.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So basically, if somebody asked me where you're from in Illinois, I normally would say St. Louis, because if you say Alton, Illinois, they don't know where you're from.
Yeah.
But we owned a business there, and my dad had a towing service with a gas station, and that's basically what I did growing up, was drive a tow truck and play sports. And then it came to draft time, and they wanted to draft me, and so I went and joined instead, so I could pick what I'd like to do.
What year was that, Ken?
69, I got drafted.
Yeah. Did you have any thoughts of going into the military, while you're in high school or anything? You have friends that, well, I'm going to join the Army, join the Marines, Navy?
Right. I had 3 good friends from our rival high school that went into the service before me, and they went to Vietnam, and a couple of them came back, a couple of them didn't. But I already had my mindset that I'd like to go fly jets. Didn't know about helicopters at the time. But that all changed after a while. So, yeah, I liked aviation real good.
Yeah. Now, where did you go to boot camp?
I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
I see. Okay.
And that was scary.
Yeah. Tell us a little about it.
Well, people ask you what was it like. Well, if anybody ever watched the movie Private Benjamin, when she gets off the bus, it was just like that. You have to make it and take it.
You're wide awake when you get off the bus.
Wide awake. You didn't know what was happening every second of the time.
Now, did you go in when you joined? Did you tell them you wanted to be in Army Aviation, or were you chosen for that, or how did you get in Army Aviation?
When I went there, they told me the aptitude test that you take told me I had a good maintenance background, and the guy said, "Do you want to work on trucks?" And I said, "No, I want to work on something I haven't." And he said, "How about helicopters?" Yeah. So I said, "Yes." Yeah. He says, "Well, you qualified to work on UH-1s." Yeah. So that I was picked to go to Fort Rucker after basic to get my AIT training.
Did you go directly from your training at Fort Rucker to Vietnam?
No.
Okay. Where did you go then?
Went home for
Pardon me.
Went home for about 15 days, and then got on a plane and went to Fort Dix, and we were going to Germany. Well, I'm sorry, going to Germany, and it was really funny because we sat there, and we finally got to Germany, and I didn't like it. Yeah. It was too much spit and polish for boots and starch fatigues. Yeah. So I put in a 4187 to transfer to Vietnam.
How long were you in Germany?
9 months.
9 months, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I went to Vietnam then.
And this was in 69 or 70?
Yeah, 69, 70 time frame.
Ken, before we talk about the military action you were involved with, let's talk about what it was like when you first got to Vietnam. Did you go immediately into combat, or what kind of training?
No.
What did you do? No,
we left, really I can't remember where we left out of Seattle or Fort Dix, but we got to Vietnam in Cam Ranh Bay, and they loaded us on buses and took us to a replacement center. And of course we get there, and you don't know what's going on, and you hear things blowing up, and we find out later on that was outgoing, not incoming. Yeah. And we stayed there for 2 days, and then they put us on a C-130, and lucky I was going north to the DMZ to an outfit called 1st of the 5th Mechanized Division. at Quan Tree. So we got up there and went to their replacement center, and then I went over to the aviation detachment. We had 4 Hueys and 4 58s. Our detachment supported the commanding general of the 1st of the 5th and his staff. So that was about it. You know, I was on a log helicopter that supported the general when his bird was in for maintenance.
You were a crew chief, is that
right? We were a crew chief / door gunner.
Right.
And luckily the unit, we had enough 67 tangos like what I was, a Huey crew chief, that also was with me to help me with maintenance, but he was my door gunner.
I see.
So we basically had a crew assigned except for pilots. It was just me and a gentleman named Steele. And we kept the bird clean and everything. And then one day, the general's bird was in maintenance, and they told me I had to be his backup. And from that day on, I became his prime bird, because his other bird, they found some maintenance that wasn't going to get fixed. So they told me would I be willing to crew for this guy, which he was an aviator, and he was a 1-star, and his pilot was his training pilot in Fort Rucker. And we became one big family. I mean, I really enjoyed working for this gentleman and the pilot. We were like family.
But you got away from the spit and polish in Germany, but with the general, it's got to be a lot of...
not really.
Not in Vietnam necessarily.
No, really, he was really like talking with you. He was so relaxed. But the only thing he was real stickler about is you show your respect to a general officer or anybody.
Sure.
And that's one thing. And we got along real good. He called us his boys.
Yeah.
And our pilot, we called, his name known was Pappy. And Mr. Cowan didn't want to be called sir. He wanted to be called Pappy.
Yeah.
And we basically, the general, if he'd need us, he'd call me Trick or Steele, the gunner.
Yeah.
It was, you know, and we'd always answer, sir.
Yeah.
You know, it was not John.
Yeah. You're still in the Army. You're still in the military.
And then we got a new detachment commander, and he was a major. His name was Rod Wolf. And he was real bad about, you say sir.
Yeah.
And he was always correcting me.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah.
To this day, him and I are still friends. He was Quad A's president at one time, and I run into him a lot of times. And he's retired at Fort Rucker now. But yeah.
Did he write you up or take any rank away any time when
no,
that didn't happen, right?
No, actually the funniest thing was he had to go, in Vietnam we had the promotion board, the E5. And he had to go be the president of the board. And when I walked in, he just turned around and told the 2 sergeant majors and some other people, he says, there's no use even talking to this gentleman. He says, because he works for the commanding general and he works for me.
Yeah.
So he says, do you have anything to say? And I said, no, sir. And he says, just keep saying that word, sir, and you'll be fine.
Get along good.
And they dismissed me and I left.
Yeah.
So.
Ken, when you had some downtime, however little that might have been, what did you do for relaxation? Were you guys, could you watch a movie or go to, have a beer occasionally, that sort of thing? Or what?
When we were down, when the general would go somewhere or we were down for maintenance, we got to watch AFKN over there.
Okay.
Or we had, back then they really didn't have no VCRs.
Right.
So we basically, but my job and Steele's job was we kept the aircraft clean, polished, and ready to go.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of people said, don't you get bored? Well, no. Working for him, we worked 24/7.
Yeah.
We didn't know when we were going to go or if we were coming back home.
Always kind of on standby.
Well, we were always on standby.
Sure.
I mean, he'd call over to the TOC and call the pilot, tell him we're ready to go. And it could be at 6 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right. When he had to go somewhere, he had to go somewhere.
He relied on us, and that's why, and my time in Vietnam went real fast. I mean, I did 18 months, and I just couldn't believe how fast the time was going, even though I got to go home for 30 days and come back. But yeah, that was my downtime with him.
Yeah. How was the food over there, Ken? Did you sea rations? You got some hot food occasionally, or what?
Oh, where we were at in Quan Tree at the airfield, we had a mess hall there, but it belonged to the truck transportation outfit. But they got our rations for us,
right.
And we had hot meals when we were in the back. But on the aircraft, I carried a case of C's for me, Pappy, the general, the aide, and my gunner.
Always have a bite to eat if you needed it.
Right. We had something if we got hungry.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure you formed lasting friendships in the service. Do you still stay in contact with a lot of your friends, like your friend Steele that you work with?
I stayed a lot of contact with Steele, and then all of a sudden he got sick, and last word I heard, he passed away.
Sorry.
I stayed really good contact with General Hill and Pappy for the longest time. Other than that, it basically, everybody that I knew in the units have faded away. You know, they either gotten families or they just, no time to write a letter or pick up a phone and call you.
We all get older, don't we?
That's right. We all get older.
It was nice to receive a letter from back home back then. Of course, we didn't have email and we didn't have phones with us. And
you waited on the mail service.
Right. And that was, how often do you get mail from back home?
Well, if it wasn't monsoon and everything, we got mail pretty regularly. And of course, from my mom and dad and my girlfriend, that was it. You know, but not much mail, especially when you're working and you're out in the field. We didn't get mail until we got back to the airfield.
And if you got any food, it'd all be mashed up, and a little stale maybe.
Well, our biggest thing, you learn the tricks of the trade over there, but the biggest thing is if you had to eat C's, everybody liked beans and Wheaties and stuff. But we'd take the can and we'd take a pair of vice grips and walk to the back of the helicopter and raise it up by the exhaust and heat it up. That's how we heated our stuff.
That's being innovative, isn't it?
Well, that's right.
Yeah. Ken, when you were over there, you flew in different parts of the country. Describe to, especially our students that may be watching the interview, talk about the different parts of Vietnam you were in. Describe the countryside for them.
Well, when I first arrived to Vietnam, everything was flat down there south. And plus
Cam Ranh Bay area,
Right, Cam Ranh, everything was flat. They had rice paddies. As you move forward, you got into the mountain country. And like where Quan Tri was, we were like less than 2 miles from the ocean. So it was kind of flat, but when you turned away from the ocean and went inland or north, you started running into a lot of big mountains and stuff. And it was hilly up there with the rice paddies and everything. And plus we had a refuel point that was in a place where a mountain yard team or whatever you call them from the Vietnam, that's where they lived. And they kind of built their village around the fuel point.
Right.
Because they knew choppers were coming in and they get leftover sea rations and stuff.
Yeah.
But
many parts of Vietnam it's a beautiful country, really.
Every time we'd leave Quan Tri to go to Da Nang to 3 Corps, where the general would have to go to a meeting or something, we'd fly over what they called a High Van Pass. And there was a beautiful, beautiful French resort up there. But it got bombed.
Yeah.
Because Charlie would use it as a hiding point.
Charlie being North Vietnamese or the Vietnam.
Right.
Ken, as we mentioned earlier, you received the Army Commendation Medal with Valor for your service in Vietnam. Tell us about the battle or combat action that led to you receiving this award.
Well, it's like you said, 24/7 with the general. We got done early that day and we went back to the hangar and dropped him off, and Pappy says, "Are we on call?" And he goes, "Yeah, because there's something going on that I may want to go to." So we got back over to the hangar and rechecked everything, made sure the bird was all ready to go. And about 6 o'clock that evening, Pappy came into Steele and I's HoH and said, "Come on, boys, we got to go." And we flew over to Red Devil Pad. That's where the general picked him up. He got in, started flying north, and of course, Pappy says, "What's up, boss?" And he says, "We're going to Charlie 2, fire base." He says, had an incident up there, and I haven't got all the information until I get there. So we flew up there, landed, dropped him off. Steele and Pappy and I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And about 20 minutes later, he walked out and called us all together. And he says, "Boys, I'm going to need your help." He says, "You see the medevac bird over there?" We go, "Yeah." He says, "They done try to make an attempt to go in and pull soldiers out of this minefield." Well, Steele and I looked at each other like, okay, now what are we going to get into? And the weather was deteriorating really fast. So they briefed us on it, and then the medevac pilot come over and told us, about the bird and everything. And of course, the medic come to me and said, "Have you ever worked a hoist?" And I said, "Well, I worked wreckers with hoist, but I've never worked a rescue hoist."
Right.
Well, he showed me the pendant that worked it, and he says, "You got any problem with that?" And I said, "No." I said, "I think I can do it." So the general come back over and said, you guys launch in about 10 minutes. We're trying to clear the people that's up there looking in the minefield to see how many's still alive."
Right.
And so we finally got ready, and we started the aircraft up, and General Major Wolf at the time and Pappy were the pilots.
Mm-hmm.
The general said, "This isn't my training ability. I'll leave it to the experts."
Right.
So Steele and I put on our monkey harnesses and got in, plus the aircraft didn't have any cargo doors.
Mm.
So we took off, and we hovered up the road to where the platoon was. And the fog had really came in after we got away from the fire base.
Mm.
And as we got up there, we kind of looked out the door, Steele and I, and you could see this huge tank that had a high-powered flash, not a flashlight, but a spotlight.
Right.
And it was lighting up where the platoon was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So Major Wolf and Pappy said, "Well, let's use the beam as our horizontal horizon," because it was really getting bad on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So we started hovering in, and Pappy said, "Okay, boys, I'm going to put the guy standing on your side where the hoist sat." Well, we looked out, we couldn't even see him, but we could see the light.
Mm-hmm.
And as we started hovering and hovering, all of a sudden I saw the guy, and of course it was a sad sight because you saw, I don't know what a platoon is, but there was a lot of bodies laying around.
Right.
And this young kid, probably like me, was standing there by two bodies.
Mm.
And so they said, "Okay, you talk to us, Trick, when you get ready to go." So I lowered the jungle penetrator down, and Steele was my backup. And I'll never forget it. We lowered it down. I kept looking, and the fog would come in and go out, and I'd lose vision of him. And I'd say, "Pappy, 10 feet down, 10 feet down, 5 feet left." And Steele says, "Remember, Tricky, swing the cable. It'll move the jungle penetrator closer to." Well, I moved it by, and a kid reached out, and he missed it. And Steele says, "Try it again, but try to bring it back to him." Well, it was tense. Both of us.
Were you being fired upon at this
No,
time?
lucky we were not getting no fire.
Right.
I don't think they could see us,
Right.
really.
Right.
Finally, I swung it back again, and the fog covered us. But I saw the cable on the hoist. You know how it pops,
Mm-hmm.
and I go, "I think we got him." And the next thing I felt was the aircraft. You could hear the engine pulling power.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked down, and it was all fog.
Mm.
And Major Wolf said, "Do we have him?" I said, "Sir, I can't see." And I think I had about 150 feet of cable out. I said, "Sir, I'm bringing it up, but it feels like somebody's on it." And about that time, we were climbing up, and Major Wolf says, "I lost my reference." Pappy grabbed the controls, and I thought, "Oh man, we're IFR.
Right.
How are we going to end up?"
Yeah.
Next thing I knew, we broke out, and I looked down, and there was this young man hanging on the jungle penetrator.
Mm.
And as I kept speeding, and the way the hoist is designed, it runs up fast, and then when it gets to a certain point, it'll slow down so you don't run it.
Right.
And I got him, and Steele says, "Okay." And that's one reason why we had our monkey straps, because it's like an extra 6 feet. So we both leaned out, and I kept running him up. And as both of us reached out to grab this young man, he grabbed us. He was crying. We were crying.
Yeah. It was tough. Was he wounded, Ken?
Yeah, he had in his leg where shrapnel got him, or from the mine.
Right.
And we got him up. Steele pulled him in. I released a cable to bring him back in.
Right.
And we moved him over, and we laid him down, told him, "Hey, we got you. What you doing?" He kept thanking Steele and I. Steele says, "Look, this is our job.
Yeah.
We're here to help you."
Yeah.
And finally, Major Wolf says, "Is he okay?" And I said, "He looks like he's got some shrapnel wounds or something from the mines." And he says, okay, we're clear. And I looked out, and you could see the prettiest moon and blue sky.
Wow.
So we took him into Quantry to the 95th evac and landed. They came out and got him. And it was hard.
Did you ever stay in contact or see him anymore? Did he make it?
After we got done, we flew back out to Charlie 2 to make the general. Pappy and Major Wolf went in to check on him. Steele and I were kind of cleaning up the medevac because, it wasn't our chopper.
Right.
And we got done and got back to Charlie 2, and everybody come back out. And General come up, and the medevac pilots and their crew said, "You get him?" We said, "Yeah." And I said, "We didn't see nobody else moving." And he goes, General says, "Well, everybody else was killed. He was the only one."
Wow.
That's who we were talking to. And Pappy says, "Well, how long he says he'd been out there since 7 in the morning. And we pulled him out about 7, 8 o'clock that night.
Wow.
And he was standing in a square no bigger than probably 2 by 2. I said, so
it moved because of mines around it, yeah.
He had 2 gentlemen that he was taking care of that finally passed away. And he was scared like we were. So we said, we thanked the guys of the medevac, they thanked us, and we got back in and we flew back to Red Devil pad, dropped the general off, and we said, "We'll see you tomorrow." And he goes, "Sleep in, boys. You deserve it." And
saved the man's life.
Yep. And the next day, the general's aide came over and said, "You guys want to go see the gentleman?" And we went to the 95th, and we just missed him. They were evacuating him back to Da Nang, to the 90 main hospital there.
Right.
But he told the nurse and the surgeon that took care of him to tell us he appreciated it.
Yeah. You think he made it as far as...
Oh, yeah.
Good.
But
well, he wouldn't have made it without you guys.
I don't think he could have kept his emotions from causing him to get scared and do something, because back at Charlie 2, they finally told us what kind of mines they walked into that Charlie had, or North Vietnamese. They had what they call bouncing betties. So if you trip on one, it blows up enough to hurt you, and then it goes up about 10 feet and then shoots another one off. It kills everything in its way.
Yeah.
So we were very thankful about that.
Yeah. Ken, some say it was their upbringing, others say it was a tough sergeant during boot camp. Who or what helped prepare you to take the action that you did during this time of combat?
I'm going to say it's both.
Yeah.
Parents that stood behind you with the upbringing, the drill sergeant that I had in basic, and then the sergeants that I had before I got to Vietnam, or even when I was in Vietnam. That was my job.
Yeah.
And you had to take that extra mile forward if you're going to do something.
Yeah.
And
training kicks in. Yeah.
Your training kicks in, and let me tell you, it is, 24/7 over there. You're scared every minute of your life.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know, living in a HoH, it's safe on Camp Eagle where I was in 1st to 5th, but at night, somebody could put a rocket in there and kill us. You don't know.
Yeah, that's what I want. The next question was, I want you to expand a little bit on that. The thoughts you have of possibly, you're serving in a war zone. The thoughts you have of possibly being killed or wounded during a battle, and it's almost constant, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Well, every day, Steele and I'd go out there, and of course, we'd horseplay around the helicopter waiting for Pappy to come, and we'd always sit down and sometimes talk. What are we going to do if we get shot at? And one day it did. The day I got my Purple Heart, we got it, the general decided he wanted to look at something. And we got down, and gee, you thought we got into a firefight. Sergeant Major got it in the leg, I got it in the back, and then we don't know what else, but my helicopter looked like a Swiss cheese with all the bullet holes and stuff. I mean, it's not safe. You go anywhere and you got to keep your eye, because it got even to the kids, or they're doing stuff.
Yeah. Walk
up and rip your watch off. But yeah.
I know people often wonder, is it okay to be afraid or scared during combat? I want your thoughts on that. How would you answer that?
I'd say me, I was afraid all the time and scared. You have to be.
Yeah.
Because if you sit there, I would say, if you sit there and say, I'm not afraid, you got to be afraid.
Right.
Because that's always in the back of your head. You know, the old favorite saying I used to watch on TV and stuff, or even in the war movies, you'll never know when that bullet's coming. Yeah. And you don't. Now, lucky, you know, they have tracers, but you don't know where those other 4 bullets are.
Right, yeah. How do you feel, Ken, when people call you a hero for what you did, when they read about what you did in combat? How does that make you feel?
Makes me feel good, but I'm not a hero.
Yeah.
I was doing what I was trained for, and that's what Steele and I and Pappy and the General took it that way. Yeah. That's our job.
Right.
And when I told that young man in the helicopter that night, buddy, I'm not a hero. Yeah. I'm doing my job. Luckily, you helped me do my job by jumping. But yeah, it's there.
Yeah. Do you often wonder, would you do it all over again?
I did it again.
Yeah.
When I was in Korea.
I see.
I had to go out to an island and pull a little Korean boy off with the hoist that fell in a ravine. Luckily, I had 2 Air Force PJs on board that night. Right. And they stabilized the little boy. But yeah, I did it again. I wouldn't be afraid going again. Yeah. But now, if we were under fire in Vietnam, it'd have been a different situation.
Sure. Yeah.
But they had that covered with the tanks, you know, if we started getting fire. But I think the weather conditions was too bad for us to get shot at.
Yeah. You've served during a war, and through the years, I'm sure you've seen a lot of war movies, or a few war movies. Do you think war is depicted accurately in most of the movies or TV shows that you've seen?
Well, I'd say half and half. Some of them are real good. Some of them make it too far-fetched, you know. I mean, like, I guess the best movie I watched was the one with General Moore in Vietnam when we never had helicopters over there. Yeah. Now that was, he made them and the sergeant major and that newspaper guy made them make that movie to their satisfaction. Yeah. And
we were soldiers.
Yeah. We were soldiers. Yeah. And same way when they made Black Hawk Down. And I was with the unit after that happened, and the parents of every person that was killed in that operation saw the movie first and told them what they didn't want and what they wanted out, and they did it. I'd say, but some of them, they get carried away. Sure. You know.
Go a little extreme. Yeah.
Well, I guess the one that's really extreme is the Apocalypse Now with Robert Duvall. Yeah. That gets a little carried away when a Huey could pick up a boat. You know.
You know about Hueys, and that didn't...
well, we didn't have the power to do it like that.
Yeah. Ken, there were protests during the Vietnam War when you served. Did you ever encounter any of the protests? And if so, how did it make you feel?
Well, I thought I was doing right, but yes, I was not in a protest, but I got spit on coming home from Vietnam. And they spit at me and got my dad, and my dad lost it, and he smacked one of the guys, and 2 police officers come up and grabbed my dad, and I thought they were going to arrest him. I said, wait a minute. And he goes, no, you just stand over here. They grabbed these 2 guys, handcuffed them, and one guy kept saying, well, wait a minute, his dad hit us. He says, yeah, but you don't spit on a soldier. Yeah. But yes, it's good and bad, but people don't realize what we went through. Yeah, yeah. You know, they don't. Yeah. I mean, I got a buddy back home, I haven't seen him in I don't know how long. He was a tunnel rat. And he lost it. And I think that's why nobody sees him anymore. I mean, when I met him back 5, 7 years ago, he wasn't all there, but he knew us, and that's one thing I think helped him. But no, they don't realize what we went through.
Yes, a lot of problems there. Yeah. Tell us about your family. You and your wife Linda have been married for how long, and do you have children?
Well, we've been married now 11 years.
Yeah.
We both have children by our previous marriage.
I see.
She has 2 daughters. One's here in Coleman. The other one's in Jacksonville, Florida. She's a nurse, dental aide. I have a daughter and a son. My daughter is a lead nurse at Children's Hospital in St. Louis. And my son works for Ford Motor Company in Kansas City, Missouri. So, and it's just
Linda.
That's right. And Linda and I are here. in Huntsville.
Yeah. How did you wind up in Huntsville?
I was working for the utility PM office in St. Louis, Missouri, and before I went there, I was at Sikorsky working for the PM office. And of course, I went in the Army and came back as a contractor. And everybody in the PM said, well, you know, we're moving to Huntsville.
Yeah.
Here I thought all these 20 plus years in the Army, I was going to get to go home and be there a while.
Right.
But I only got to stay 2 years, and then I moved to Huntsville.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, I mean, it's been great. I ran into Linda. We got married.
Fantastic.
And now this is my home.
Yeah. You may be retired, but you're still pretty active. Talk about some of the things you're involved with now.
Well, I'm trying to get more involved with the Vietnam organization.
Right.
Of course, being a Hall of Hero, I try to come, you know, volunteer if somebody needs help.
Sure.
I was in the 160th. I'm in their chapter. I used to be the vice president 2 years ago. There's so much to do here, you know, to volunteer for.
Yeah. There's a lot of veterans in this area. And this, yeah.
Well, when I was vice president of the 160th chapter, I couldn't get over when I took over that retired or veterans of 160th. We got over 130 here.
Wow.
I was told at one time, we got more people down here than there is at Campbell. But Fort Campbell's getting so big.
Right.
But yeah, but I always try to go to the golf tournaments to help support them and everything.
Yeah. We're just about to wind up the interview, Ken, but I want to ask you, what would you like for those watching this interview, especially our young people, to learn from your military experience?
Well, don't be afraid. I mean, when I joined on the dotted line and signed and went, you got to take that challenge and follow it. I mean, it's a job. It's a little bit different than working for a business in town, but you got to work a little and get promoted. You know, but I think the children should try to go because you get a free education.
Yeah.
You
Military may not be for everyone, but
right.
Yeah. But
well, it's like my wife. Her brother has a foster son, and he had a real bad life, and he was going to ROTC. And when we went and I got to meet him, I gave him an Army pack and stuff. To this day, this gentleman is in the Army, and he tells his stepfather and me and Linda that that's his home. That makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And he says, this is for me, this is my life. And it may not be for some people, and for women too. Yeah. You got to be adjusted to it. Sure, you're going to get yelled at, get called names, but it's not like that now in some places. Yeah. You know.
You got benefits, education benefits? You know.
Well, I was so busy with the generals, I didn't get to go. I got 2 years of Embry-Riddle, and then I was too busy.
Yeah, I see.
And then, of course, my background, when I worked at the factory at the Army office up there for almost 7 years, 8 years. Yeah. And when I went back to the real Army, I just stayed at Campbell a while, went to Korea, was in a special ops unit there. And when I came home, I went to the 160th, and I was in their, what they call their systems office, where we put the latest and the greatest technology that if we could fit it on a Black Hawk, we could. Yeah. And that's what I did. I was more like a technical expert. Yeah, yeah. And that's what I've done probably my 44 years of being military and contractor for the government.
You enjoyed your work very much.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah. And I'm loving retirement now even better.
Ken, thank you so much for participating in our oral history series and allowing us to preserve your military experience for the people of this community. And thank you, sir, for your service to our country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we want to, if you'd like more information regarding this interview or any interview in our Military Heritage Series, please visit the Madison County Military Heritage Commission website at mcmhc.org. I'm Tom Kennemer. Thank you for being with us.